This is Mark Bell from SuperTraining.tv, Super Training Gym, the strongest gym in the West. Got a question from Jake Wolf off of Facebook. He asked me what kind of cues am I thinking in my head while I'm performing a squat or a bench press. I might as well tell you about the deadlift as well, since we're there, since it's powerlifting and you're supposed to do all three lifts, not just one or two, all three. Okay, so in the bench press, first things I'm thinking about when I do a bench press, before I unrack the weight and try to get my upper back tight, that's actually something that clicks into my head, and I try to think, okay, let's get that upper back tight. Without that upper back support, I feel like I'm not going to be able to handle the weights, especially the real heavy weights. So I need to set my back and my shoulders just right. And the way that I do that is I try to tuck my shoulder blades into my back pocket, basically, if you can kind of picture that. I'm not very flexible or mobile in any kind of way, shape, or form, so arching is very difficult for me, but I still try to arch my upper back the best I possibly can. I cannot arch my mid-back to save my life, and that's a huge problem of mine. But that's the main thing, is I try to get that upper back tight. What I'm actually thinking during the actual bench press is the same thing I think throughout all three lifts. I think gather my strength on the way down and explode like a motherfucker on the way up. Try to put everything I possibly can into that bar. I feel like I'm gathering strength or sucking in strength or bleeding people of their strength in the room as I'm lowering the weight. That's kind of the mindset that I have when I'm doing it. I try to gather strength as I begin to bring the weight down and touch. Hopefully I touch. As I bring the weight down and touch, I try to blast the weight back up as explosively and as strongly as I can. That's usually the sensation I have when I'm raw, when I'm geared. There's a lot more thought that goes into it because I have so many problems with touching weights that I have to actually physically think about touching the weights. I have to go through a process in my head, a checklist. First thing I do is I kind of elbow out against the material of the bench shirt a little bit. Second thing I start to do is I start to bring the elbows in a little bit as I descend. And then the third thing that I do is when I get close to touching is I try to basically lift my head up and roll my shoulders forward a little bit. Not the greatest technique in the world, but there's really not a lot of great options not a lot of great options out there for me as far as touching weights go. And so that's pretty much it on the bench press. For the squat, on the way down, on the descent of the squat, first thing I'm thinking of before I unrack it is I'm thinking unrack that weight strong and explosively. Not necessarily explosively, but unrack it strong and be real sturdy and make sure I have air in my stomach and not in my face. What I like to do on the way down in the squat, the thing I like to think about is I just think about knees out and head back. I'm trying to keep my head back or even with the rest of my body, especially for me because I do a dip. If I go to do the dip and my head comes this way, then I'm screwed. There's no way I'm going to come back up out of that hole. So when I do my dip, I try to keep my head where it is, if not anything, more than anything, shifted almost backwards, basically. And then I dip and I try to explode up out of the dip. But it's the same concept. Gather strength on the way down and lift like a mofo on the way up. Lift with everything you got on the way up. In the deadlift, I'm thinking knees out and trying to pull my shoulders up high. A lot of people talk about bringing the chest up or doing this or that, but really, if you look at the sumo deadlift in particular, the guys who are able to bring their shoulders up nice and high normally do the best. There are occasions where guys lift with a crazy rounded spine and they don't have to worry about it as much. But particularly in the sumo deadlift, you'll kind of see a high shoulder position. And as far as their hips go, their hips may actually not be low, may not be very low, but it's their shoulders that they gather up and they bring high and they kind of pull their chest through and let their arms be elongated. I also try to think about getting my back flat a little bit before I pull. I'm not necessarily trying to make my back completely flat, but it's more of an intent than anything to get my back tight, to pull my shoulders up high and allow my hips to drop a little bit, and I throw my knees out and throw my head back as I begin to pull. So I think that covered it. Hopefully that helps answer your question, and that is it from SuperTraining.tv. Later.